Hello, Internet. My name is Ricky Hyppa.
And I'm Griffin Conway.
And together we are the Buzzed Critics. Today, we will be discussing video game movies. So,
where to start?
Where to begin? I'm going to go off with Street Fighter on this one.
Well, first off, let's just
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I don't think there's ever been a good video game movie.
Me neither.
I mean, I think that there have been a couple of okay ones, and there are ones that I love just for nostalgic purposes. Street Fighter, the original one.
Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers, Double Dragon.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, those are funny only because they were campy for the time, but also they were designed to be for kids.
Yep. And because we grew up with them, we appreciate them. If those movies came out now...
Now the question is, we appreciate them, but are they good? No, they're not good at all. They're horrible.
They're terrible movies.
But even it goes further. I mean, Tekken, the Street Fighter remake, Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark,
Silent
Blood
Hill,
Rain,
I would say,
Resident Evil, Tomb Raider.
I wouldn't be able to mention Silent Hill because that was the one, even though I've never played the video game before, the one movie because I judged it on its own because I never played the video game. I thought the movie was a decent movie. It was a good, decent horror flick, going back to our conversation about horror movies. Did play on a lot of fears. I thought it did that well.
I actually like Silent Hill. I like Silent Hill 1 and 2. I preferred Silent Hill 1 more, though. But I'm a big Silent Hill fan. I love the games.
I can't comment on how well it relates to the story of the video games because I never played the video games.
Silent Hill 2 is basically the third Silent Hill video game.
Oh, okay.
So, you said you want to talk about, you want to open this discussion up with Street Fighter. The new one or the remake?
I'm talking about the
original. Or the old one or the remake,
sorry. The old one or the remake?
Yeah.
Yes, the original one. The only thing I can remember about it is that Jean-Claude Van Damme was in it.
And Jean-Claude Van Damme was?
I can't even remember the...
Guile! He was Colonel Guile.
Sorry,
any news?
I mean, and the Mortal Kombat movie did the same thing, is the notion of making a video game movie out of the one genre of video games that really doesn't have a storyline.
It had one, but it was really loose.
Yeah, it has a very loose narrative behind it that's just... I mean, the Mortal Kombat series, I did kind of say the storyline was kind of cool, but you don't play the Mortal Kombat games
the story.
For the story.
The story wasn't even mentioned hardly. It was mentioned in the scrolling screen and the scrolling text is where the story was. If you didn't read that or you just passed it like I'm sure everyone else did, you have no clue what the story is. And I know by now everyone knows the story of Mortal Kombat because we've been playing the 13 or 14 video games and we've all seen the 2 movies plus the Mortal Kombat miniseries on YouTube, which is getting its 2nd season and has been drafted for a movie. Now,
the guy that they casted as Liu Kang in the first one...
Robin Chow.
Can't think of anyone else
Robin Chow appears...
No one else could play Liu Kang except for him.
It's funny.
I'm sorry.
Robin Chow was everywhere in the 90s because of Mortal Kombat, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't see him, dropped off the map. In the new Street Fighter movie, the remake they did, The Rise of Chun-Li...
He's in it?
He's in the fucking movie. He trained...
What a traitor.
He helps train Chun-Li, and it's weird seeing him because he has long white hair, and he has, the long Fu Manchu.
Oh, really?
And watching it, I'm like, why does this guy look familiar? And halfway through a scene with him, and you're like, it's Liu Kang!
Liu Kang!
And that's what he's doing
You're just waiting for someone to come out and be like, Liu Kang!
You really were.
Oh, man.
So, just video game movies. Okay, why do people not understand that when people watch a video game movie, they don't want to watch a video game on the big screen, which is why a lot of them are bad. It's why they're cheesy, it's why they're campy, because some things are better as video games. Blood Rain is a perfect example of that.
Haven't seen it, but I've heard
Have
nothing.
You played it?
No.
Blood Rain was like a second-rate Legacy of Kain series. Soul Reaver, for those of you. It was, it was okay, but the movie was horrible. And it was because it was trying to follow the video game with video game logic and physics applied, but it doesn't translate well. And a lot of those, Tomb Raider was another one that you had a long action...
I didn't really mind the Tomb Raider movie.
But compared to the game.
I never played the game, maybe that's why.
The games were more like adventures. It was more about using your mind. There wasn't as much fighting.
Indiana Jones is a hot girl.
It was, but there was less action in Tomb Raider because it was more about thinking. It was more about your environment.
Like Resident Evil.
And the movie, it was... like Indiana Jones with a hot chick. And it's like, that's not... I mean, yeah, it's good. And it's good because it didn't follow Tomb Raider. But it's not what Tomb Raider fans want. I was like, oh, they're going to make a Tomb Raider movie? That's weird. It's going to be kind of like a mildly paced archaeology film. And it was just like an action movie. Not really Tomb Raider.
So the lesson that we learn is only Harrison Ford can make archaeology cool.
Well, it wasn't archaeologist. She wasn't an archaeologist. But
Well,
I'm saying it was
still.
essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Resident Evil. That's another movie that it doesn't follow the game.
Doesn't follow the games.
But
I remember you mentioned you like the Resident Evil.
I do like the Resident Evil movies.
The first one I thought was good and had potential for the series, and then after that I was just like, oh my god.
But see,
why are they coming out of the graves in the sequel? They're not.
See, the one thing you and I can agree on about Resident Evil is that we want to see Leon in real life. Because Leon makes an appearance in Resident Evil Degeneration.
Oh, he does?
It's the cartoon.
Oh, I thought
he makes an appearance.
I don't know what
No, in Degeneration, he makes an appearance. I want to see Leon on the big screen. I did like how they added Wesker in the last two Resident Evil movies. I thought that was awesome.
The Resident Evil movie that I want to see is one that is a dark, psychological thriller playing on the theme of the games, because the games are really their thinking games.
Oh my god, absolutely.
You know what I mean? I want to see a video game movie based on Resident Evil where you have, maybe the first half an hour or so exposition of, building the storyline of Leon, and then just really, once the shit hits the fan, show him going through these psychological challenges that you go through in the video games. In the video games you experience all these crazy little puzzles,
Well, it's like typical Resident Evil. You start off in a room in a huge mansion in the middle of nowhere. There's like 7 zombies. You have a gun with 4 bullets. There are 2 locked doors and no sign of a key. That's typical Resident Evil.
Really, the Resident Evil movies, I felt they did the same thing that they did with the Dawn of the Dead remake, and that's what they did is they took the setting and the storyline of a horror movie and they made it more into an action movie, which I love both genres and that's fine, there's only 2 Resident Evil games I've ever played, which is Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica. I love them both, but I just saw a couple Resident Evil movies, and the first one I thought was, okay, a decent start to the series, but after that, I was kind of like, and they're still freaking making them now.
Outbreak was awesome. Resident Evil... I'm just a Resident Evil fan, period. I like Code Veronica, I like Outbreak, I like Resident Evil 1, I like all the way 1 through 4. 5 was... I haven't played 5 yet, but it's good. I'm a big Resident Evil fan. I like all the Resident Evil movies because I don't take it at face value. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to see... It's Resident Evil, so it has to follow Resident Evil. I like the fact that they've taken Resident Evil and made Resident Evil the movies and Resident Evil the game. Because here's the thing, you're asking for Resident Evil the game on the screen. If you got it, you would hate it. Because it wouldn't be what you're expecting.
True.
You can't have a psychological thriller like Resident Evil transcript to the screen.
Unless they did it right, and they had the right people involved.
But they hardly ever do.
No, of course they don't. I mean...
And they're going to get Uwe Boyle to fucking make it.
Don't say that. We don't use that word in this house.
It's my house.
Exactly.
Good point. So, we had Tekken.
I didn't know there was a Tekken movie.
Came out in 2010.
That's recent.
It's kind of mediocre,
What about the...
Alone in the Dark was another one they did. House of the Dead was another video game movie.
But that was directed by...
They were
I refuse to watch any movie.
It's just like, why do people... It's almost like the comic book syndrome. It's like, these are video games, so they have to be made campy and cheesy because that's what fans want to see. But a lot of the video games they're turning into movies are kind of gritty. And which was cool what they did with Silent Hill. I mean, let's forget the fact that Silent Hill is in itself a terrifying game. Mm-hmm. It's a great game, but they knew it was dark, it was gritty, and I think they got the creatures right, they got the atmosphere and the vibe of the town right. How come that's not happening with more video game movies? It's like we're getting shortchanged as video game fans because we're not sophisticated enough to watch a video game movie that has a little bit of meat behind it. Something with substance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you. And, to this date, there's only been 1 or 2 movies that have come close to just being decent movies on their own right. Because whenever I see a comic book movie, a remake or a video game movie, I always try to judge it just on its own right. Don't compare it to anything else. Just watch the movie, which is what I did with Doom. Of course, I've been a big fan of the Doom games.
Love Doom games. Hated the Doom movie.
Yes, the Doom movie.
Hated the Doom movie.
Now, let's just pretend that the Doom video games never existed, and this movie just came out on its own right. No video game background at all.
It'd be a great cheesy action movie.
No, I disagree. I think it'd be a terrible action movie because there's so many just little things about it that just pissed me off. What they did is they took the plot of Aliens, a movie that's very near and dear to my heart. A group of Marines go to a planet that
Game
they've
over,
lost.
man. Game
Yes.
over.
They've lost contact with this colony on this planet, and a group of Marines gets sent to investigate. Now, unlike Marines, Aliens, where we had the beautiful direction of James Cameron, who knows what he's doing when it comes to sequels, we had the direction, I'm not sure what the director is, but they took the storyline of Doom, which if you've ever played Doom, you know that it's about hell, a portal of hell opening up on a random, military installation on Mars and then wreaking havoc. So this is what they did, is they took the one thing that made the video games really memorable, really terrifying, and really cool, and they changed it to be some kind of, a genetic mutation.
Right.
I mean, that's...
It's weird that you said terrifying, because Doom, when it first came out, was terrifying. I mean, that was a horror video game.
Yes. And Doom 3 was good, too. That was a good scary...
You could almost say that, Doom was the start of, survival horror, but you could also... I mean, you have to say it's the granddaddy of Halo. I mean, Doom was the very first big first-person shooter.
Or I would say it's the early cousin of a game by the name of Marathon, which is a game that Bungie came up with, which is famous for being the very first-person shooter that you can look up and down on.
Yeah.
Before that, when it was Doom was just left to right, left to right, but Bungie, being the innovators that they are, came out with this game back in the day, around the same time as Doom, called Marathon. Kind of a similar story. If you just take the story of Doom and the story of Halo and you put it together, you pretty much have Marathon. So it's a pretty good story behind it, and up and down innovation, great. But yes, as Griff mentioned, the Doom storyline.
Doom was almost groundbreaking for video games.
Oh, it was. It was one of the very first-person shooters.
I don't know anyone who's played Doom and hasn't liked it. I mean, Doom is just a great game. People. Doom is just a great game to play.
I could play it now.
It's hours of replay value, and it's great. The Doom movie was so far from what the game was.
And I had such high expectations for this movie.
And it's not like they had to deal with graphics. And it's not like they had to deal with anything major. It's not like they're dealing with Lord of the Rings type graphics here they have to scale to, where you had this book that had this great detail. It's Doom. It was bad graphics.
I recall seeing the commercial for that movie around the time it's released, which was around 2009. And then they showcased this one scene, which is the one scene that I will kind of appreciate from the movie, where what they did is they had a scene where they bullshitted in the storyline where he's getting this stupid genetic drug injected into him.
I hated that scene.
Me too.
Well,
I hated that part, but the scene that I did enjoy was the fact that they took the first-person perspective and they bullshitted in that scene. I thought that was kind of creative. I thought that was kind of cool. I was expecting a little bit more.
It was like I was playing a 3D version of Doom when that happened.
Yeah, I mean... It's kind of like a mixed bag because, some people you could watch and be like, oh, well, I feel like someone else is playing the video game for me and I'm just watching it. I thought it was kind of cool just how they kind of bullshitted into the storyline. That was the one little solemn microscopic gem that they had in that movie. But it's not that good enough a gem to make me want to watch it again because I've seen it once in the theaters and I will refuse to watch it ever again. And I can't really say that for myself with a lot of movies. Even movies I hate that I don't like, if it's chick flick or whatever, I'll watch it. But Doom, never again. Never again.
So tune in next Tuesday when we'll be having a very special Doom viewing party. With
I won't be here.
No, so going back a bit, Doom was nothing like the video game. Resident Evil movies are nothing like the video game. But
they still had elements.
But you know what movie is really nothing like the video game? Super Mario Brothers.
Yes.
Nothing like the video game, but I love that movie.
Me too. It's one of those movies.
Hilarious.
It's so bad.
It's good.
It's so terrible that it's great.
To think you have three huge actors in it.
Bob
Hoskins as Mario. Sorry.
Yeah.
Bob Hoskins as Mario. John Leguizamo as Luigi Mario. And then
Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, Dennis Hopper is Koopa.
As Koopa.
And two of those guys have have awards.
And the name that you listed, those castings is the... I can't see anybody else as Mario.
Oh my god.
Hoskins. He plays he's the one thing that tied it to the video game perfectly. Bob Hoskins is Mario. He has the look of Mario. He kind of has that same the weird attitude, and he kind of plays this really cool little character. John Leguizamo was Luigi.
I love John
I thought it was a really random
great.
casting, but yes, I do agree.
I like John Leguizamo.
Me too. I've never seen a movie that wasn't...
The Happening. And
he was in that movie.
He was... What's that George Romero one they did? Land
of the Dead?
Hated that too.
See, as much as I didn't like Land of the Dead, I did like his role. I thought that was the one...
Cowboy?
And in fact, hey, speaking of that movie, Man of the Dead, guess who else is in it? Who he was reunited with from Super Mario Brothers? Dennis Hopper.
Oh my God, he is.
More on that later. But
Well done, John Leguizamo, for hooking up with the same actor twice.
But this movie took the most
So
audacious
weird.
idea of let's make a Super Mario Brothers movie and let's make it live action and let's try to make it realistic.
And it worked weirdly. For the time that it came out,
hell yeah.
it was like the closest you could get to being feasible to why Mario going down pipes, the bomb, slime, Koopa. I mean, it took the weirdest turn.
I know. I'm so glad they made it though, because
the writing was honestly, it's such a weird. It's so left field. It's almost genius. It's almost brilliant to go, hey, we're going to have an alternative universe, and Daisy's going to be from that universe, but she's going to have a piece of a meteorite. That's like, really? Well done, Mario Brothers writers.
I love the two idiots, the two...
Spike and Iggy?
Yeah. I love...
Which are actually Koopa kids from the video game. Yeah.
And they have Big Bertha, which is, I think, the big red fish from one of the video games.
Big Bertha in there.
Love that. I mean, no review of video game movies cannot mention that.
Anything's possible, Mario.
You just have
gotta
to believe.
I do believe.
And I love those.
I believe the rent is 6 months overdue. I mean,
I love those little inspirational quotes that Luigi gives throughout the whole movie. They're just so random, and it's just such a weird and bizarre movie that I have to love it.
The ping pong between Bob Hopkins and John Leguizamo was great. They have great screen chemistry together.
Oh, for sure.
In that movie, you can totally tell one is the older, mature brother who loves his brother, but at the same time, he's just like, he's crazy. Like, my little brother is borderline retarded, because he's just coming out with the weirdest...
And I love the ending boss battle between Mario and Koopa.
I like how you call it a boss battle.
Where he uses the little, the ba-bomb.
Oh, yeah.
And in a complete reference to the Super Mario World video game that came out on Super Nintendo. If you bought the Super Nintendo, it came with that. We have King Koopa in the bucket.
Yep.
At the end of the scene, and then he gets shot with that little...
Trust the fungus!
The de-evolution gun.
Trust the fungus.
Yes.
You had the mushroom and shit.
So, Koopa, I mean, not to blow...
They almost predated, I think Super Mario Brothers, the movie, I think it predated Mario Kart. Because there's that entire scene where they're in the taxi and everything. Yeah. That could almost be a predator... in a roundabout way... You could almost say that Super Mario Brothers the movie was the inspiration for Mario Kart.
I would have, if it would have came after Mario Kart, I would have been so satisfied if one of them was eating a banana or something.
Yeah,
and just tossed it out.
The fact that they got in the car and they had that huge car chase and everything. I mean, a line that sticks with me from that movie is when they're getting lined up and they're having their pictures taken because they're arrested. They go, "What's your name?" "Mario." "Last name?" "Mario." "What, Mario?" And they turn to Luigi. "What's your name?" "Luigi." "Oh, Luigi? No, Luigi Mario." I mean, it's just great,
It's very good dialogue.
It really is. And they play it so well.
And I love the Toad character. He's just this hippie guy that has, his guitar and his, harmonica. He's sitting there, the scene where he's in jail, where they're all in jail, and he's singing his bluesy song.
Yeah.
And then, John Leguizamo, or Luigi's going along with it. I just thought that was so random and so great.
I love the Goombas. They had Goombas in the movie. I mean, and the Goombas weren't like you see in the video game.
Of course. Well, you couldn't.
Right.
But live action, they couldn't. Right?
That's what I'm saying, though. It was Super Mario Brothers the game, Super Mario Brothers the movie. The movie's nothing on the game. I take that for Resident Evil. I'm like, there's Resident Evil the game series, and then Resident Evil the movie.
For sure.
It was... Because they knew, for whatever reason, that they couldn't have followed Resident Evil or Mario on the screen. Because they never went down a pipe, really, like they did in Mario. They never really got coins in Mario. They had the introduction of rocket boots in the movie. So they took the world of Mario, and they kind of twisted it to where... It's feasible as a movie, but it would never work in a video game. And the video game would never work on screen. That's what I take as Resident Evil.
Okay.
But there's a sea of movies that have just bombed, that have come from great...
It's typically always from someone that's either trying to make it exact like the source material, or someone who deviates too far from the source material.
What's an example of deviating too far? Doom? What's an example of trying too closely to copy?
Too closely to copy? That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I real honestly can't think.
Probably House of the Dead?
Probably House of the Dead. Yeah.
Because House of the Dead was boring. I mean,
I haven't seen all of it, but I have seen
the
part of
game
it.
was great. I love those
Yeah.
House of the Dead games.
Yeah, that's an on-rails shooter. How do you make
Yeah.
how do you make a movie out of that?
You don't. And you don't try to follow the movie or the story that House of the Dead presents.
What they need to do is they need to stop making movies based on video games and start making movies based on board games, like Battleship. That was a joke. Another ridiculous concept.
Yeah, yeah. Rihanna.
Liam Neeson.
Taken 2, Taken Back.
Liam Neeson's in that movie, apparently.
So, what irritated me is that Street Fighter came out in the late 80s.
Yeah.
I saw Street Fighter. I think every 25-year-old and under has seen Street Fighter.
Oh, for sure.
Now, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine and I were at the mall, and we're passing the movie theater, and we see Street Fighter: The Rise of Chun-Li. And I stopped and paused, and I didn't know they remade it. And watching it, of course I had to watch it. I mean, it's a Street Fighter remake. I had to. Mm-hmm. Go in, sit down, and I get what they were doing, but they tried to make it too gritty. Did you see the remake?
No.
They tried to make it like a realistic explanation of why Street Fighter would exist, and it didn't portray well. And not saying that the original movie was this golden statue of cinema gold, because it wasn't. But the remake was just, it took itself too seriously. And it wasn't what Street Fighter fans wanted. There's a reason why it tanked. It's because it wasn't good.
Wait a minute. I think is Michael Clark Duncan in that movie?
Yeah, he plays Balrog.
Oh, I saw that movie. I hated it.
He plays Balrog.
Hated it. I saw it. I tried.
Bison is a tall white English dude, not some big Russian. You know, so many.
I saw that movie and I didn't buy the villain. I didn't buy the acting. I thought the whole thing.
Then you've seen Robin Shao in that.
Yeah,
Chun-Li's teacher, the dude with the white hair. That's Robin Shao.
My God, I don't even.
Hashtag Liu Kang.
Liu Kang.
So it comes down to like, what's a video game movie you would like to see?
All right, now, there's only really 2 video game franchises that.
And keep in mind, we're putting it on the internet, so this can go anywhere. People in New Zealand could stumble across this.
I hope so.
So
Peter Jackson, talking to you.
So somewhere down the line, someone could very possibly see this and say, hey, choose carefully. Don't say Kirby, or don't say Tetris.
No, the video game that I want to see. Halo. Now, hang on, hold on to your horses. I don't want to see a video game.
Forward unto dawn.
I don't want to see a video game based on Halo 1. I want to see a video game based on the novel, The Fall of Reach. Because for all you Halo fans out there that already know what I'm talking about, shut up, and I'll explain this to the folks who don't know. The Fall of Reach is a prequel to Halo 1. It was written back when Halo 1 just came out and it was just starting to become a huge hit. And then they're like, oh my God, if we write a book about it, it's going to make even more money. Typically, when these kind of cash-ins happen, the material is just garbage, just cash-ins. Ironically, for this specific circumstance, the book called The Halo: The Fall of Reach is one of the greatest science fiction novels I've ever read. It reminded me a lot of Starship Troopers. I had a lot of elements of that, of war, being gritty. And I just love the difference of the portrayal. Okay, in the Halo games, when you shoot someone with a needler, you see this cool thing come out of the gun, and it hits the person and it explodes. And you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then if you do, a fuckload of them, then the whole person explodes. That's great. In the books, the way that it's portrayed is that it's violent. It's dark. It's, it's very, like, one goes into a Marine, it freaking, blows them up, and they talk all in very heavenly detail about how violent it is just getting shot with one of these things. And if you've ever played the game, you're like, oh my God, that's cool. But what The Fall of Reach did so well is it told the origin story of the Master Chief.
117? John 117, right?
And it led up to the events of Halo, which is what I want to see. If they were to make something like that as the first movie, and then make, the story of Halo 1 maybe the second movie, and then you really... It would have to be like a 4-part story, really, in order to do it all well. Or maybe if you were to just do an original trilogy covering the original Halo trilogy. But I want to see Halo brought to the screen with either Ridley Scott, James Cameron, or Peter Jackson directing it. Because I feel that...
Ridley Scott.
For sure. Because these video games were, when Bungie was making them, they based them off of the Alien series and Starship Troopers. If you've ever played the video games, if you've ever seen those movies, you can see.
You could take Ridley Scott from like the grittiness of American Gangster and Body of Lies, and you could tie it in with like Prometheus.
I was thinking Ridley Scott more along the lines of Alien, because of the way in the original Alien movie,
right.
The way the Flood is portrayed is very, very reminiscent of the Aliens, and of course with Aliens, James Cameron's
right.
action influence, very huge influence, and then the way the soldiers look and the guns look is very Starship Troopers, and I'm talking about the Paul Verhoeven movie that came out.
The internet knows Starship Troopers. Yes. They remember the movie very fondly.
NPH. So I would really love to see a very well put together Halo movie that was based on the novel, not the video game, but the novel. Base it more on that, and then after they do that, after they set it up great, then they can do away with the original Halo trilogy in film. And again, it has to be directed by Peter Jackson, Ridley Scott, or
James Cameron?
James Cameron. For sure. They did that, and they made it, of course, it's a kind of a cliche here at Buzz Critics, dark and gritty, but they made it action-packed, and they made the character development good and all that, and they just portrayed the future. What I really liked about the Halo series is the fact that they portrayed the future. I mean, this is a future in like 400 years from now, and they portrayed it so realistically. You know, anytime you see something in the future, 400 years from now, you think, okay, flying cars, this, that, and the other. But in Halo 2, they still have cars that are driving on the road. You know, and yeah, they look a little bit different, but I love the fact that Bungie was just like, okay, yeah, in X amount of years, it's going to be different. It's going to look a little bit different, but
the basic mechanics will still apply.
Yeah, and I thought that if they applied that same kind of logic to a movie, it would be absolutely.
By the way, I want to take this moment to give a big shout out here. Ricky talked about Halo. Go check out all 4 Halo games. Go check out Reach and ODST. Go check out the Halo books, the Halo novels. Halo miniseries called Forward Unto Dawn.
I haven't seen it. Can you believe
it is awesome.
I'm a huge fan of Halo.
Every episode's like 20 minutes, but it is awesome. It's intense. It's gritty. It's dark. It's fantastic. Forward Unto Dawn is just amazing. It's great. More so than that, though, Internet, and a lot of you already know this, I want to give a big shout out to Rooster Teeth.
Yes.
For making a series called Red vs. Blue. They're at
haven't seen too much of it.
339 episodes, 10 seasons, and it is one of the most epic shows out there. So go check out Halo if you haven't played it or heard of it. Go check out Red vs. Blue. Go check out Forward Unto Dawn. A video game movie I'd really like to see done well, strictly because I'm a big fan of horror movies. That's where I'm rooted in. I'm also a big fan of survival horror. Mm-hmm. I got to go back to my basics on this. I would love to see a good Soul Reaver movie.
Soul Reaver?
Yeah. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Raziel.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's great. So, Soul Reaver, the premise of Soul Reaver is that vampire's name is Kain, takes over this world, this planet, whatever, an area called Nosgoth. And basically they have 9 pillars, each one representing elements, 4 representing elements, 4 representing like emotions or whatever, and then the 9th pillar was balance, keeping them together. This vampire Kain gets really corrupted, destroys all the pillars, takes over, creates a lieutenant named Raziel, has 9 other lieutenants with him. Kain evolves to the next stage, and later on one of the vampires evolve. Raziel evolves ahead of Kain one time, though. Kain throws him into water, decimates him. Raziel comes back to avenge his death. But the gameplay is this immense world, and it's all twisted buildings, it's dark, it's run down. It's almost like a medieval setting. Mm-hmm. And it was really dark, it's really gritty. The environment is very creepy, and it's a fantastic game. There was 2 Kain games, and there have been 2 Raziel games, and then they did a Kain Raziel crossover, and it's great. I love that series. I want to see that done right. I want to see that in like a, I don't know, like a good, dark, gritty, heavy, scary movie. 300 of Soul Reaver, if you will. I mean, it needs to be violent, but I would love to see that movie done. Done right.
Done right.
Done right. Because it could easily turn bad, but done right would be awesome. And what I gave you is just a really rough version of Soul Reaver. It goes into way deeper stuff of like, there are different time switches going on and different planes of existence, and the question of like, are you a redeemer or are you revengeful, and what does a soul mean? It's a huge, great story. Definitely play the games, but I'd like to see that done.
You know,
I'd love to see that done.
You know what I would also love to see done, and when Disney purchased the beloved, what's that franchise called with the X-Wings and the TIE Fighters and all that? Oh yeah, Star Wars. One movie that I would love to see, and this kind of ties into science fiction, which we'll get onto on a later episode. I want to see Shadows of the Empire movie. You can base it on the video game, because everyone's played the video game, we all love it. Or you can base it on, just has to be Dash Rendar, and didn't he have that robot as his Chewbacca kind of character? I would love to see a Shadows of the Empire film. Like, you can... I think it'd be so cool. The way the game starts out, you're on Hoth. You can kind of just see the Battle of Hoth from a different perspective, and then go on into the missions that he does. I'm sure they can bullshit the storyline of that. I would love to see that, because that's one element of the Star Wars universe that really hasn't been,
it hasn't been touched on.
Hasn't been touched upon since back in the day when they first came out. And they made a book, and then it was supposed to be a book, a movie, and a video game set in between Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And the movie just got canned.
And instead we got the Star Wars Christmas special and the Ewok Adventure.
Well, no, the Star Wars Christmas special actually came out right after the first movie came out.
Oh, okay.
But either way, yeah, the Ewok Adventure, stay away.
So what do you think people want? So whenever you hear about a movie that's coming off of a video game, what do you think
they want?
What do you think the studios are trying to do when they're like, oh, we're going to make a video game movie?
Well, I could say the answer to that. I think I could say that based off the material that they made are two completely different answers. Because, what I would think that they would think, is, okay, let's just take all the best elements of the script, and let's, obviously there'll have to be some changes, get some actors that will be able to portray it well, and let's, portray it on screen. I mentioned the Halo series earlier. The only character that I can envision portraying the Master Chief is a young actor, or older actor now, by the name of Michael Biehn. You might remember him from the movie Aliens, and he was also in The Rock. He always typically plays this kind of, heroic action figure that doesn't really have a lot of words, but when he does have something to say, it's something really smart and really cool, which is exactly what the Master Chief is. Now, the Master Chief kind of talks in this, a similar, Clint Eastwood-esque, kind of a little bit deeper voice, and I think the guy that voices him is kind of older. But I just really think that he would be the best person to cast for a hypothetical Halo movie.
Well, I don't just mean, in general, though. Whenever you see a movie that is based on a video game, what do you think the studios are thinking?
That's a very good question, because, when I watch movies like Doom, that's the question.
Doom, Tomb Raider, Resident
When
Evil.
I see all these video game movies, I'm asking myself that question, is what were they thinking? Like you mentioned earlier, it's all this campiness, and most video games aren't campy.
They're not. Well, I think video games can't be campy, because you buy a video game and you know what you're getting into. If you buy Spyro the Dragon, you're going to be playing as this purple dragon who runs around this fantasy world. Same thing with Crash Bandicoot. Same thing with Halo. It's going to be a first-person shooter. Gears of War works the same way. Fable, Devil May Cry, Tetris. I think video games are on the table. There's nothing that they hide.
I think what the problem is that they either try to make it dark and serious, like they did with the Super Mario Brothers movie, or they try to just make it campy and whatever, like they did with basically all video game movies.
I think that the two main problems I've encountered with a video game movie is that they're always what, how to phrase this, they're always what the fans talk about seeing, but not what they're actually representing.
Yeah,
I think is the best way to put that. It seems like the studios are always going, okay, these fans want this. This is why they play the game. And I think that's what they're missing of. It's not that we want to see the game on a screen. We want to see the aspects of the game.
Sure.
We want to see Resident Evil, but yeah, we don't want to see Resident Evil for the zombies. We want to see Resident Evil for the humans who have to think their ways around these situations. But we want to feel the pressure. We want to feel the timed pressure.
Mm-hmm. Without it making it looking like, oh, someone else is playing a video game.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to see Doom where you're outnumbered, you're outgunned essentially.
I think that the movie Event Horizon portrayed Doom far better than the actual movie
I agree.
did. Because it's basically the same story. It's, okay, we're in space.
Minus the Marines.
We're out in some random area, and then a
Dead Space would be a good movie.
Yeah.
Dead Space would be a great movie.
I've never played the game, but from what I've heard...
Dead Space is awesome, dude.
That movie that game was heavily inspired by Event Horizon.
That game is so good.
That's what I keep hearing, but I haven't played it.
Great. And there are 2 cartoon movies based off of Dead Space, which are great.
If they had to make a campy video game movie, I would love to see a Grand Theft Auto video game.
My god.
That kind of had a little bit, just the right amount of camp in the action scenes. Make it campy because
I think they did. I think it's called Friday. Right? I mean, Friday. It's a mix of like Friday and Bad Boys.
Yeah,
it's a mix of Friday and Bad Boys, and maybe Trading.
If they did make a GTA video game, it would have to be based on San Andreas.
Would it? Would it?
In order for me to truly enjoy it, because San Andreas, in my opinion, is the greatest Grand Theft Auto video game in the history of the franchise.
I don't think anyone's gonna argue with that.
No, I mean
GTA 4 might have better graphics.
GTA 4 was great.
GTA 5 might have more characters, but it's all about San Andreas. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have it was just the mix of everything good, and Rockstar hit it out of the park. But Rockstar always hit it out of the park. I mean,
no, the bar is always high with Rockstar games, and I'm very excited about GTA 5 because I know that they are returning the setting to. So far, all they've announced was the fact that it's set in LA. And I recall back when San Andreas was being released, it wasn't up until a month or so before it was released that they revealed, it's not going to be just LA, it's going to be San Francisco and Vegas. So if they can pretty much make GTA 5 also have those 2 cities, if they can make it be the whole state, and if they just essentially, took the map of San Andreas, made it bigger, made it better, made the graphics better, put more missions in it, and if they don't take anything out from San Andreas like they did with San Andreas and GTA 4, I think that game would be unstoppable.
We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Are there any other good... What do you think a good video game movie is? What's been a really good video game movie that you've seen that
honestly,
you're like, man, this is good?
Other than, Silent...
Honestly, good.
Silent Hill was pretty good. I never played the video game, but I thought that was pretty good. And then, we mentioned earlier Super Mario Brothers. Other than that, there's not really any movie that, is based on a video game that I can sit there and, if I see it on TV, go, I'll watch that, or, if I have it, just I feel like watching that movie, I don't really think I have any other video game movies other than that, so, yeah, none. 0.
None? I don't know. I like Silent Hill. I liked Resident Evil, because I took it as a separate entity.
Yeah.
Super Mario is strictly for nostalgia.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
Strictly for nostalgia. But, I don't know. It seems like when a movie comes out now from a video game, it's not trying. And I know right now is the year of the comic book movie.
Oh yeah, we are in the golden age comics, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this is totally comic book movie era. This is the greatest time to see the greatest version of comic book movies. Mm-hmm. Maybe next year, or in 5 years, we'll have a rise of the video game movie. But there are some video game movies that aren't really video game movies. You have Wreck-It Ralph, which isn't that bad. And it's
Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
I love Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. But that's based off a graphic novel.
We'll review that later, but yes.
That's based off a graphic novel. # Brian Lee O'Malley.
So that's more of a comic book movie.
It's more of a comic book movie, but I love it.
But at the same time, it is a video game movie because
with video game references.
Yes, all the video game
Zelda
references.
Music, the 1-up, the physical 1-up he grabs, and I mean, I loved Scott Pilgrim, and that's a video game movie without being a video game movie. Mm-hmm. Wreck-It Ralph is a video game movie set inside of a video game where the protagonist doesn't want to be a bad guy anymore and tries to change his path.
I haven't seen it.
Only to realize the greatest ending, which is the world needs bad guys too.
Haven't seen it.
Well, it's fantastic. I don't know. There are a lot of video game movies out there that haven't hit their target market, and a lot of them go under the radar when they get released.
Yeah.
And then they tank. So obviously their formula of video game movies isn't working. The only reason why Resident Evil is done the only reason why Resident Evil is done so well. Well, the only reason why it's done so well is because of what they're doing. Why is Resident Evil working and every other video game movie crumbling?
That's a very good question, because every time I see a new Resident Evil commercial on YouTube, the first 10 comments are in complete solidarity with my opinion. It's, oh my god, why are they still fucking making these movies? You're the only person that I know that actually is glad that they're still making these movies.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't own any of them. I own the first Resident Evil on DVD.
For sure.
That's the only one I own. That's the only one I own. Resident Evil 2 sucked. Resident Evil 3, nah. Resident Evil 4 and 5, pretty good. But I'm not going to watch them more than once. And Resident Evil, the first one, I'm only going to watch maybe once every
blue moon. A good movie is a movie you can watch once, twice, 6 times in a week.
Yeah. So it comes down to...
I watch Terminator 2 every day of the week.
So what's Resident Evil doing that other video game movies aren't?
That's a very good question.
What's the big difference between Resident Evil and Mortal Kombat?
I couldn't answer that because I ask that question every time I see a commercial for a new freaking Resident Evil. I'm like, they're making... Why? People are still lining up to see this?
Yeah, clearly. Clearly.
I don't get it. So, you can probably answer that question better than I can. I can't. I'm asking that question with sincerity in my heart.
I don't know. I think other video game movies should definitely take something
take
from
a page from that book.
Yeah, they should definitely take a page.
I think that of all the franchises that need to get a reboot, it's the Resident Evil franchise.
I disagree.
I think
because they're either going to make it too serious or they're going to make it too campy. I think right now it's exactly what Resident Evil needs. My only complaint is I want to see Leon on the big screen done right.
Exactly. So this is
but they had Jill. They had Jill Valentine. They had Chris Valentine.
But
they've had every other character in Resident Evil.
We get the writing staff of The Walking Dead to make either a Resident Evil movie or a Resident Evil TV series.
I can leave The Walking Dead any day of the week.
Have you seen The Walking Dead at all? You can watch the first 2 seasons. So
Sadly, I've seen The Walking Dead.
Sadly.
And I know I'm probably the only person on this boat, but it doesn't impress me.
But see, I love The Walking Dead, but we're getting a little bit off topic with The Walking Dead, so loved it. But
do you have any other comments on video game movies, Rick?
No, just James Cameron or Ridley Scott or Peter Jackson make that Halo movie. It's still every time a new entry into the series is released, it's still making millions of dollars. There's a clear market for it. The Halo fans are out here. Do it. Based on the fall of Reach. That is all. Just do it.
All right, Internet. I don't have any more to say on this issue.
Me neither.
So I think we're going to wrap up for today. Until next time, I'm Griffin Conway.
And I'm still Ricky Hyppa.
And this is the Buzz Critics, and we will see you next time.
You won't.